Hi everyone, it's Jeanette here from the Sewing Studio with another binding tutorial, but we're going to do it this time all by machine because I quite often get people that say they either can't or don't like to do sewing by hand. So I thought I would show you how to do it if you're going to machine bind it all. Now before we get into that, what I'd like to do is just show you the little runner. Now this was a block we did a little while back, so you can have a look on our YouTube channel, and the block's called Mosaic. So you can have a look for that to how we actually made this little runner. But I'm just going to bring it in under the camera here so you can see the quilting. Now we had a Brother machine event here in the shop a couple of weeks back, and I actually quilted this on the Brother V3 as a demonstration here in the shop for this. So it's sort of mistletoe on there. So on one of those days that we have the event, I managed to quilt this whole little runner. So these little projects are ideal for sort of quilting on your embroidery machine. So you might want to have a look at that. Now, I think we've had a few requests for showing on this. So if you're interested, do put something in the comment because we'll have a look at bringing that to you here if there's enough interest. So I thought I'd just share that. And I thought now we've got it this far, we might as well just finish it off and turn it into the runner. But we'll do the machine binding all by machine, the binding all by machine. Now, the first thing to do is just to measure how big our little runner is. Oh, that's a noisy. 32 by 12.5. So simple maths to work on that out. 2 12.5 is 25, 2 32, 64. So we're going to need, what did I say, 32 and 64, 96 inches of binding. And I normally add about 4 to 6 inches of that just to give myself enough leeway. So in my head, we're thinking sort of 3 width of fabric strips, or at least 2.5, and that should be sufficient binding. I realised I galloped through that. We'll put further details in the description for anybody that's interested. So the fabric I used for this was a little charm pack, and I think it was called 12 Days by Holly Taylor. So I've actually got some yardage off the bolt, a fabric that matches with that, and I'm going to use that for the binding. And I wanted to bring out more of the green, so I've chosen the green version of this. And I'm going to use my handy little folded corner clipper. Now we have done a little demo on using that for binding, so if you're interested in that, you can also go and find that on our channel. But what I'm going to do, I use this every time I do binding now, this transforms binding. So I've cut 3 2.5 inch wide strips, and I'm going to line up my 2.5 inch line on my little folded corner clipper and do that. Now the one thing I've got to watch on this fabric is there is a direction to it, so I want all my words to be facing the right way, that I don't end up with any words upside down. So on that first strip, I just need 1 cut. On my second strip, I need to cut both ends. That's going to be my middle strip. And then on my end strip, I just need to cut this end for the moment. And that's my 3 strips prepared. So I'm going to take those to the machine and join all of that with 1/4 inch. Now, if I just show you, this was our first strip. So because we've made that mitre with the little folded corner clipper, those now are going to join together and everything's going to match up beautifully. So that one to that one. And then that one to that one. So there's our seams, and you can see how all our tops and bottoms of our fabric all lines up beautifully. So I'm just going to take those to the iron and press those seams open, and then I'm going to press that whole binding strip in half. Now what I tend to do next is just do like a bit of a dry run, because I just want to check that my seams don't end up hitting any of my corners and giving me some funky corners. So I tend to just sort of do a bit of a a trial round just to make sure that that's not going to give me a problem. And it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be close. Right, the other one's there, so I'm going to just move it down. So that was worth checking. I'm just going to move it down to about there. And that should make sure that we're okay. Okay, I'm happy. Now also, because my writing is all in one direction, I am just going to check that as we do that now, I'm doing machine binding, so there's no point putting it on the front. No, remember we put it there. Leave my pin there, because I'm actually going to start on the back, just to dummy run it so that when I bring it round where my writing is, and I'm happy with that. Okay, so we're ready to go. So I'm just going to put a couple of pins here. And I'm probably going to start sewing somewhere around here because we want to leave ourselves lots of room to work here. And I'm just going to do 1/4 of an inch all the way around, mitering the corners as we go, but we'll have a look at that as we do it. Okay, so we're going to sew and stop 1/4 of an inch away from this edge here. Now before I get to that end, I'm just going to get myself a little ruler and just mark where my 1/4 of an inch is. And reverse back a few stitches. I'm going to cut my thread. I'm going to take that out of the machine. I'm going to fold my binding so it goes straight up. So this gives me my 45 degree, and the edge of the binding is in line with the edge of the little runner. And then I'm going to bring that down. And I've got 3 match points I'm looking for. The fold of the binding should align with the top of the runner, the raw edges with the raw edge, and then we've got 2 little pieces here which are folded, which should sit on top of each other. And if we've got all those 3 match points, we should have a nice mitered corner. This is going to fall off. There we are. Let's do that. Once again, I'm going to wait till I get close to the corner and then mark my 1/4 of an inch. And you wait until you get close, because as you're sewing, it will move the binding a bit. So if you mark it all to begin with, it will very rarely end up at 1/4 of an inch still. There we are. So we've gone all the way round, and I've just left some unsewn bits here, which we're going to finish off in a minute, but this is just going to give ourselves a little bit of room to work. Now, the rule of thumb is we need to overlap our fabrics by the width of our binding strips for a mitered join, which is what we're going to be doing. So my strips were 2.5 inches, so I need to overlap my two ends by 2.5 inches. So I can see that's my end there, 2.5 inches. Now I just cut just very slightly on the inside of that because you always end up with this tiny little bit of extra fabric. So it's probably not even a 1/16. Just very slightly on the inside of that mark. And now we're going to get our little folded corner clipper again. Two and a half inches. The same on this side. And then we've made ourselves the mitre, and just check at this point that you're not putting a twist into the binding. We're going to sew that with 1/4 inch. Now we're just going to check that that all fits nicely, and it does. So I'm just going to take that to the iron and press that seam open again. And now we can finish off that seam. So with the help of that folded corner clipper, that's made that really simple and quick, and everything fits absolutely perfectly. So all we're going to do now is flip this over, and I'm just going to bring all of that binding round to the front. Now this might take me a little while because I'm going to probably do a little bit of a tidy up and get rid of any sort of threads or anything that might poke out the way. Now the other thing you may need to do to get a nice mitered corner there, because quite often there's quite a little bit of bulk with the wadding there, so quite often what I'll do is just snip away just a tiny little, and I'll show you how small it is, just that tiny little bit of wadding, and that just helps that corner fold a bit flatter. But so you don't want to take too much away, you don't want sort of empty corners, so it's better to do a little bit and then take a little bit more away if you haven't quite got it. But that just helps everything sit a little bit flatter in those corners. And all I'm going to do is go around. Now if you've got the binding clips, these are really useful at this point as well. Now when it comes to that corner, all I'm going to do is sort of pull it out so you've got a bit of a right angle, and then you can fold it back on itself. Now I've got one clip there, so let's utilise that one. Now I'm just going to take a little bit of time, pin this all around, and then I'll meet you at the sewing machine. Okay, so you can see I've swapped out all those pins that were poking me for some clips. I went and got some clips. And now what we're going to do is take that to the machine, and we're just going to do a little top stitch all the way around the edge of the binding, just literally just sort of catching that very edge of that binding here. So let's take that to the machine and go and do that. Now I've set my foot up. What I'm going to do is actually use the inside of this foot as the guide that I'm going to run along that folded edge, and my needle's just slightly to the right of that to give me the top stitch. Now I am actually going to bring my needle up and down just so that I can get that bobbin thread out the way so it's not causing us problems on the back. And then we're just going to very carefully just go all the way around. So there we are, we went all the way around. I just overlapped it a little bit and then just did a couple of stitches on a back stitch. But if I put it in under the close-up, it's a bit of a green thread on green, but you can see how I've just sort of caught that. My stitches are right there, just on the edge of that that's held everything down. So a lot quicker. Just take your time, find something on your machine, either on your foot or on your machine, that you can keep everything as straight as possible and as lined up. And it's just really nice. Now you do end up with just like this extra sort of rounder stitching in the background, but I've just used a thread that blends in, so it's not very visible. And that's all done. So that's all now ready to use. So there it is, how to do your binding all by machine, no handwork in that at all. As I said, quick and simple. And a nice quick finish for our lovely little Christmas table runner. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you give it a go. If you've never done machine binding on it, give it a go. And if you do, please do let us know how you get on. Thank you for spending some time with us here again today, and I hope you'll join us again here next time in the sewing studio.